Hello, my name is Joe Duffy. I'm a professor in social work at Queen's University in Belfast. And we're here today in the wonderful Great Hall in Belfast to interview Joanne Sansome, somebody I've known personally and professionally for a long time. And we're really interested today in hearing more about Joanne's life and her experiences and her personal and professional experiences in social work and in activism in the field of disability. So we're going to get started now. Hello, Joanne.
Hello, Joe.
Great to see you today.
You too.
So, can we start at the beginning, Joanne? And if you just talk us through your experiences of education, first of all.
Well, I went to Flemington School in Belfast on the Malone Road. It was a school for physically disabled children when I went there, but now it's a bit of everything. It's complex needs now. I went there from I was 2 until I was 19. Even though integrated education wasn't inclusive of disability. At that time, we did a lot of classes with Campbell College and Hunter House and Massey. So there was always a bit of integration even before it became the government way. I didn't want to leave and just go to a day centre. Like many people at school days, I wanted to go on to do A levels and a degree in art. So I I pursued that avenue with great support from my careers teacher at school. First of all, I left and went to Castlereagh College, and at the time there was no disability access in further education. First 2 weeks at Castlereagh College, they didn't have a disabled toilet, but they weren't allowed to build or to renovate a toilet until I was already a student. So I had to be enrolled before they could do all the renovations that was needed for the first 2 weeks. My family had to come and assist me with personal care. And then eventually they got 2 weeks later, they got the bathroom facilities and stuff installed. Now I think a lot of people with disabilities go to the Lego Castlereagh. It's more the done thing now than what it was way back in the late 1990s. When I went to college, art college, I went there to do my foundation, and that was the same experience. I had to be enrolled before they could make all the changes that was needed. But I was kind of used to it by then, so it didn't fizzle me as much. I enjoyed the foundation year. It was a fantastic year, because it was a mix of mediums and disciplines. And I went on to do my degree in visual communications. I thought I wanted to be a web designer, come magazine layout designer. That's what I thought my career was going to be. But when I graduated, I went and done a diploma in marketing, basically because as a disabled person, I found it hard to get any company to take me serious because of my disability. The amount of interviews I had where people said to me, "Oh, on paper you don't look disabled." It was unbelievable. And that was only when I didn't put on my application that I actually had a disabled, was disabled. If I put that on, I didn't even get an interview. So, so I went back and did my postgrad in marketing, and I got graduate of the year runner-up, and I worked for a while with parody training afterwards.
Education is something that clearly is very important to you, Joanne, and
Yes,
you also studied and graduated in the Research Methods Masters here in Queen's.
yes.
Do you want to tell us what that experience was like for you?
If you had asked me when I was younger, would I do a master's in research, I probably would have laughed and said no. But I really enjoyed it. I never thought that I ever would have went on to do a master's in anything academic like research, because I was always more creative when I was at school. During my time in our college, I did a module in research and I loved it. So I suppose that showed me way back then that maybe I do like books. Then I went to America for the year with study USA, and I had an amazing time. And it showed me how inaccessible um our education system was compared to theirs. And by that I don't mean that it was easier to learn over there or anything. I mean, the tutors were way more understanding and empathetic to my needs. Like, I didn't have to constantly ask for sign-in sheets to be moved lower on doors and things like that. They did it automatically. Eh, I didn't have to think about stuff like that. Everywhere was accessible for me to go, and anywhere that wasn't, the lecturers automatically moved the rooms without me even having to turn up and sit at the bottom of the staircase or anything like that. They were just more in tune.
And when you compare that to the experiences you talked about earlier in terms of going to higher education institutions here,
It was like night and day.
clearly research is something that
Yeah.
you're really interested in.
Yeah. And again, that came about through my involvement with the social work students. I started helping yourself and Gavin with bits of research as a peer research, well, service user peer researcher, and I enjoyed it. You gave me a piece of writing to do one day, and I went home and did it. And when I brought it into you, you said to me, "Would you never think of doing a master's?" And I laughed, and I was like, "No." And then about a year later, he said again, and I was like, "Okay, I'll apply." And I didn't get it first time round because I hadn't put half of the stuff that I'd done on the application,
I remember that, yeah.
and I had to reapply again with all the stuff. And I got in, and it was just a real good experience.
Tell us about December 2016. Why was that a special month for you?
That was the month I graduated from my master's, and Queens were fantastic. They gave me my graduation gown for like a week, and I had to go and get photos done in the Great Hall and at the front of Queens.
It really was an impressive piece of work. Um, and I mean, as a further extension of the fact that you're really interested in research, you've gone on to be involved in other research studies and publications.
I wanted to move out into independent living, and I was told by my social worker at the time, who was very good and similar in age, and so we got on really well. And but she said to me at the time, "Don't you know, if you move out because of your support needs and your care needs, you won't be able to continue working?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that." So I had to give up work. And whenever I moved out, I was like, "Well, I'm not going to be the type of person that sits at home all day doing nothing, because that's just not me." When I was at school, I was head girl, and I loved, like, making changes if I thought something was wrong. I loved getting people together to like kind of make the change, and I was always doing surveys and things for the students. And so I thought, well, I really like that. And I did work for Disability Action while I was a student. I did their graphics. So I contacted them and told them what was going on, and I I started volunteering for them, and I updated their graphics again. And in that time, they got funding from the Centre of Human Rights for to do a project about disability and human rights. But they were setting up a group. So I went along to it, and you had to apply for it like a job. And I was one of the people that was selected. There were 16 of us, and we became the Real Disability Network. And we went to Brussels and had delegations with the EU and things like that. It was a real learning experience on lobbying, not just in Northern Ireland, but England and the EU and the UN. It was fantastic, fantastic learning, and I really enjoyed it. Um, but the the funding was coming to an end, so we went independent, and we got a bit of our own funding. But as COVID was hitting, just before COVID, pre-COVID, it was getting harder and harder to get funding. So we decided just to be an online group, and that's pretty much how my online activism started then. Um, and during the pandemic, I was asked to sit on the Disabled People's Parliament and the Women's Parliament in Stormont just before the collapse. That was such an amazing opportunity, because you could see the change that politicians were starting to listen, and they were starting to think about the legislation changes that needed to happen via lived experience. And then the collapse happened, and that's basically where we're at now, the collapse.
Those experiences, Joanne, that you've just explained and just described to us, I suppose, how did they make you feel? Did they make you feel that you wanted to actively do something about that and try to create change?
I'm not a person who gives up. I don't know what that is. It's like, I don't know, something built in. I just don't give up, and I try not to let things annoy me. I try to always find solutions or change something for the better. And if I can't change something, then I, I try to think of something that I've learned from it and move on. I always try to find the positive, and I I'm not sure quite why that is. I just think it's just something built in. I suppose I was born very premature. I was born at 26 weeks. So I suppose in a way I've always been fighting for my life, so this is just a different fight.
So, Joanne, I mean, you've clearly talked about the roots and origins of activism has almost been part of your DNA, and the fact that you had to use that type of drive and energy, determination, and commitment to get things changed through those early formative experiences, and you've continued in that way. Can you think of any sort of standout moments where your activism has resulted in positive change for the lives of disabled people?
I hope it's making um people would legislate and write the policies and the procedures. I hope sharing my lived experience with them and others is is showing them where they need to change, and it's also giving other people in similar positions to me. It's also encouraging them to share their lived experiences, and we're finally beginning to realize the power of our collective voice and supporting each other.
So there's something about the importance of the lived experience that comes from within, and the fact that we need to recognize that as a force for change and a force for good.
Yes, because you just have to look at that one statement I made at the Queen's when I was watching the drama students doing the role plays, when I said, "Do yourself and Gavin, why are you using students and not real people like me?"
I mean, as a further extension of the fact that you're really interested in research, you've gone on to be involved in other research studies and publications. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
I've done two book chapters. The first one was the Rutledge Handbook of Activism, and my chapter was on the theory of activism, and it was done globally with people all over the world, and we didn't meet. So it was just like the pandemic, only it was pre-pandemic because it was written online. We all peer reviewed each other's chapters, and it was a fantastic experience because we were all activists, and we learned so much from each other. And the editorial team were activists as well, so it was just fantastic, and we've all kept in touch over Twitter.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's been more than a piece of research for
Mm-hmm.
you. You've formed really sustained relationships
Yes.
with other activists like
Yeah.
yourself. That's a really interesting connection now to social work education, because we have been talking about trying to improve people's understandings and insights so as they can also understand needs, hopes and aspirations of people who are disabled. You've been involved in social work education for a long time. In fact, that's how I first met you way back in 2006.
Yes.
And what have been some of the standout moments for you where you have influenced the shape and complexion of social work education in Northern Ireland?
Well, I think for for me the standout moments is always being with the students. I love being with the students. I love seeing how they progress from being only a few weeks into the course till the end of the course. It's amazing. To me, the social work students are are our future because they're the ones that are going to be helping us advocate for the changes that we need within our lives in the future. So it's very important that they get that interaction with service users from year one of the social work course, and not just when they graduate and go out into the big bad world of practice. So I think that's very important. And all of the work that we've done behind the scenes that allow service users to be part of the role plays, and we've trialed marking the role plays, and we we've had where we give feedback as part of the examination, and basically what we found was what we say isn't that different to what the lecturers say. So but the students are more receptive to take it from us, I think, than they are from the lecturers.
It is really interesting to hear the importance of your involvement as having a really important outcome for the students in terms of your hopes as well, or in them
Yeah.
for the future in
Yeah.
terms of how they will practice. That's a very interesting way of framing that, I think. Another thing you've mentioned a few times is COVID and the pandemic. So we know that all of our lives and all of our worlds changed early 2020. But and I know also you've talked personally to me about that. You've talked to others. You've been on the radio. You certainly haven't been silent. You've talked to people at a policy level here in Northern Ireland. Do you want to just sort of summarise for us how that whole experience has been like for you?
There's a lot of disabled people in the everyday that have that experience where they don't go out and they don't participate, but it's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. And the pandemic kind of highlighted that, and things going online and meant that more people could participate in everyday things. And it was fantastic in a lot of ways. Since we've started to go back to the so called normal, it's the online bit is starting to dwindle. People that can't go out as easily are starting to be left behind again. And I had a feeling of that for a while too, because the world started to go back to normal before we were allowed to go back to normal. Clinically extremely vulnerable, we were kept in for a little bit longer than the rest of society. As soon as people started to be able to go out, the online meetings got less and less. And we had to keep reminding people that we were still being told to shield. And that was hard for me. So I can only imagine how people feel that that's their life. And that's the thing. When I'm still calling for hybrid meetings, that's why, because I want those people to still have that option.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Given that the impact of COVID restricted all of our lives around the world in so many ways. But what you're saying very clearly,
For some people, it enhanced their world.
because they became more included
Yeah.
through the online means that we all had to very quickly adapt to.
Yeah.
So those achievements that came out of that sort of level of societal adversity in regard to inclusion may now be hampered.
Yes. And not only that, it's also a worry that if we keep on saying we want hybrid that will be excluded from the real reality of meetings because they'll think, oh, if they keep asking for it, they must need it.
This has become another campaigning issue for you that you feel very strongly about.
Yeah, because we don't want to be excluded from any part of society. That whole Ireland's future that was done the big meeting down south, they could have easily made that hybrid, and they didn't.
You've shared a lot of experiences with us today, from your early years right up until now. You've had to overcome a lot of societal challenges, a lot of barriers. You've had to work very hard to overcome those
Yes.
in terms of your strength of personality and determination. What would be your message to people who are watching this today and who are listening to this today in terms of what they should do if they come up against similar obstacles that you have come up against in your life?
First of all, don't give up. If if it's something you really want to do and are passionate about doing, there's always a way, and there's plenty of people willing to support. The disability movement in itself is very supportive of each other. Like, for example, I'm always going on about describing your images on Twitter, and that's not because I have a visual impairment. It's because I know and see so many other people that do. There's one guy in particular who is still an A-level student at school, and he's going on to do his A-levels this year. And over the summer, he had a whole big campaign about people altering their images. And before he went back to school in September, he said to us all, I'm so worried that when I go back to school, everyone will stop altering their images on Twitter because they don't have me reminding them every day. So we all agreed that we would keep on reminding people the alt every day. So that's kind of what we've been doing. And even now, a lot of evenings when he would be online, probably doing his homework or whatever, he would private message us all and say, thank you, I noticed today that you all were keeping at it, and thank you. And it's just wee things like that. We all really support each other, and if we see one of us are like maybe not feeling the best or whatever, and we know that we're sharing a meeting with each other the next day, we'll say the one another, don't be worrying about going to that meeting. I'll let you know what's there. We are pretty supportive, and we do have fun.
You really are a very busy person, Joanne. You have so many um, aspects of life that you really are connected in, and you've mentioned Stormont a few times in this conversation we're having. To what extent have you been involved at a policy level in Stormont?
Well, I've done the Disabled People's Parliament and the Women's Parliament in the past year. But before that, I would have had briefings with the executive whenever I was in the Rail Network. We would have went to the APGs sometimes because they're pretty closed off, the APGs, and they're it's all stakeholder groups. It's not really citizens, and that's why I would love to see our democracy changing to a deliberately co-produced citizens democracy, whether that's proportional selection or lottery selected like a jury system. I don't know, but I think we need to change our democracy system. I don't think it works the way it is, and the Good Friday Agreement allows for civic democracy, so I think it needs to be looked at, and certainly in the near future.
Are those the types of messages you would want to give out to anybody who's
Yes,
watching this, who's
yes,
involved in politics currently in Northern Ireland?
yes. All the political parties. Um, I think the way forward is citizens' deliberate democracy. Um, I think party power has had its day, and now we need citizens' power.
We've talked about a whole range of things here today, Joanne, and I've learned some new facts and information as well that we haven't talked about in the past. But and we've also looked at the sort of issues that are around currently. But I suppose the next and concluding question is to think about the future and what do you hope to achieve in the foreseeable future? What do you hope to do in the foreseeable future?
I would really like to do my PhD, um, for the reason being that over my lived experience, I've seen that research gets more attention from policy makers and legislators if it has the backing of an academic or an academic institution. I think the way forward is to make sure that more people in all aspects of society are able to be seen as that academic.
You've talked there about the importance of doing a PhD um, and connecting the PhD into the impact it might have, hopefully, on policy. Have you thought about where you'd like to do it, where you'd like to study? Because I know you've talked about here and the US as well.
I would love to do it here, but I would love to have maybe a semester or a teaching experience at Berkeley or the Harkin Institute, something like that. Since the Harkin Summit in last June, I've made a lot of links with America, and I've met Judy Cumin, who is a big time disability advocate in America, and she's global really. She's like um a real mentor, and she was the person that led the disability movement in America to get Americans with Disabilities Act implemented. I knew from a young age what they had done in America, and maybe that's why I always had in the back of my head that I wanted to go to America and I wanted to be an American because I knew that it was more progressive even at a young age. My mum always tells me from I was about 6. I used to say to her, I'm going to live in America someday.
Yeah, well, let's hope.
So, well, I did for a year. So,
Yeah,
but
so you've experience of it.
yeah,
I mean, I've known you a long time, Joanne, as we said at the start of our conversation, and I've seen you involved in achieving very significant milestones in regard to the way you've shaped, informed, influenced social work education.
well, it's never just me on my own, no.
And I'm conscious of that, but you have been a really significant force in terms of the shaping of policy and education, insights and understanding, not only here, but around the world. And I was with you just a couple of days ago in the classroom situation with the students again, and you could have heard a pin drop in the room and the amount of emails and I got afterwards about how powerful that was, and also what the students said. I mean, you witnessed that for yourself. So you have been a powerful force for good in terms of helping people to understand and improve their insights in terms of issues around disability. How do you feel about yourself in terms of what you've achieved? How do you feel proud of what you've done?
I don't know. I don't know if proud is the right word. Life just happens, and you either take it and roll with it, in my case, or you hide away and give up. And I'm not that type of person. I couldn't just give up. Life is for living, and there's always a way around living, even whenever we were in the lockdown and I couldn't go out and no one could come visit me because that was for a pretty long time. I almost felt closer to the world because I was able to like go to an American summer camp. I know that sounds weird, but there's an American summer camp every year in California specifically for disabled activists. And I've never been able to go for one reason or another. And during the lockdown, they moved it to virtual. And I was like, this is my opportunity to go. And I went to it, I attended it, and it was for the whole summer. My support workers never knew when they come into my room who I would be online talking to. I there was one night we had a call with Barack Obama, and I thought he couldn't see me. I, I thought I was just that I wasn't spotlighted on the screen, so I thought I'm just an attendee. He won't even know I'm I'm there. And it was 12 o'clock midnight our time, so I was sitting drinking a hot chocolate. As you do, talking to the former US president and thinking he can't even see me, so I was snacking as well. I was eating food, and the next thing he went, oh, and someone from Ireland is getting very into the fireside chat now, but the people got hot chocolate. And he waved at me and said, hello, Joanne, and I nearly spent the hot chocolate all over the place. And I was like, I didn't think you could see me, never mind hear me, and he told himself laughing.
I think it's been a wonderful opportunity today to talk to you and to hear about your experiences, some of which I hadn't heard of before. But the sort of way I'm left feeling, having had this conversation with you, is full of hope and positivity. And
You've been a huge help and inspiration and mentor as well over the years. So that can't be understated either. It's academics like you who support and encourage and promote. That's needed. That's
yeah,
needed.
so it's a twin approach, it's
Yeah.
a partnership approach.
And I've had that. I've been lucky throughout my student life, I suppose. I've always had good teachers and mentors like yourself.
Well, thank you, Joanne, for today. It's
Thank
been an
you.
absolute pleasure and a privilege.